What are some of the things that you found? Now, I've been going through your research, and I'm seeing that, you specifically talk about things like segmented tardigrades, and one of the things. Let me see if I can quote it here. Um, it is how tardigrades lost mid-trunk segments. What's that all
Yes.
about?
Yeah, so that was one of my that was probably my biggest discovery so far, I'll say. And it was a really cool one. I made a lot of traction and a lot of people liked it, especially the paleontologists. That's how they found out about me. And so what I did was I looked at the genomes of tardigrades and compared them to their relatives, which they're related to arthropods, which are also segmented animals. Uh, so if you think about like an insect, they have those three different regions. There's the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. We know the thorax is where we see the legs, and there's three pairs of legs. So there's three segments in the thorax, but there's also many segments in the head. So the head is actually made of six segments. It's not just a single segment. And then the abdomen also has a series of segments also. And if you look at something like a millipede, they have a whole bunch of segments that all have legs in them. And so tardigrades, they're much simpler. They have a head and four trunk segments, so four leg bearing segments. So compared to most arthropods, they're close, potentially their closest relatives. They have much fewer segments. So it was unclear, and the fossil record couldn't help us with this question because the fossil we can't go deep enough to find out. But it was unclear whether like the ancestral condition for tardigrades and arthropods, that big group of animals, was like a little stubby thing like a tardigrade, or was it a much more long thing like an arthropod? So when I went in and looked at the tardigrades, the first thing I noticed was that looking in their genome, there's a whole bunch of genes that control the development of mid-trunk segments in arthropods that were missing in tardigrades. Now we know that those genes should be there because they're even in humans. Like these genes are ancient, and in all animals, they kind of like control a mid region of the body. So that was pretty surprising. So we knew these genes that control the midsection of the body should be there. They're not. And when we looked at where the remaining genes that kind of set up different regions of the body that say like here's the anterior, here's the middle, and so on. When we looked at where those genes were active during development, I found that they were kind of like only head genes were kind of controlling the development of nearly the entire body axis of a tardigrade. So when we look at how tardigrades develop, how that whole body axis develops, basically what this demonstrated was that nearly their entire body axis is just related to the head of an arthropod, just the head region. And there's no trunk region. And then there's just a little butt region, like the little posterior part is retained. So I came up with like a nice name for them. I think some people are throwing some names out to call tardigrades. They're calling them butt heads. I think when I made this discovery in the lab I worked in, and I didn't like it, so I came up with the walking heads, which I thought was really much nicer. So basically, they're little heads with legs,
Wow.
and it pretty much demonstrated that tardigrades they evolved from a longer ancestor, so they're not the ancestral condition; they are the derived, which is kind of surprising and interesting because when I got into this research and thinking about studying tardigrades, I thought they probably were more representative of the ancestor, and I could learn something about how arthropods evolved. And that was my initial like reason for studying tardigrades. But so many times I've discovered that tardigrades they're the weird ones, and I'm learning more about how tardigrades actually evolved than I am about how arthropods evolved. But I'm very happy about it because it's so interesting and surprising and exciting that I'm fine to discover things that I wasn't expecting.